Welcome back, AP. Welcome back to it. Welcome back to the start of your next unit, right? We're now going to be moving on into a very fun unit that I absolutely love teaching about. I love the fact that the French Revolution and this unit line up so perfectly, and I also love the fact that the French Revolution unit relates to this one so efficiently, right? So the big thing about it is we are now moving into your unit about the Industrial Revolution, right? We're now going to be talking about the Industrial Revolution, which will start out in Great Britain and then sweep its way over the entirety of the European continent. Now, the big thing about it, though, is this is a flip right after a test, so I'm not going to be trying to be here to take up too much of your time. We are actually just going to try and do this in about 15 minutes just to get us introduced, get our toes wet, and get straight after it, right? But let's go ahead and get into it. So when we're talking about continental Europe during the 1780s to 1815, for those of you who are actually paying solid attention, you realize that some crazy, intense, insane things were going on in continental Europe, right? We had the French Revolution raging. We got people being beheaded. We got women marching on Versailles. We got Bastilles being burned down. We got Tuileries being taken over. And then we have the rise of Napoleon and him taking over. And basically, in a nutshell, you have a lot of chaos going on in the continental European area, right? Going from all the way from Portugal all the way to Russia, you got Napoleon wreaking havoc, and you got the French Revolution dynamically changing the differences in socioeconomic and also political expectations within the continent of Europe. But this is going to be a little bit different, all right? So it's going to be a little bit different because when you go over to Great Britain, they're not having those issues, right? They're actually going through something known as the Industrial Revolution, right? So while the French Revolution was raging throughout the continent and stuff like that, the Industrial Revolution was taking off in Great Britain. God, just the advent of being an island, you know what I mean? It's just it has this really, really good things. So looking at it, by the way, also too, look how cute this Prezi I made is. Look, it's a little factory. It's got a smokestack and the clouds of smoke coming out of it and stuff like that. Now, going into it, though, as well, when we're talking about it, what is the Industrial Revolution, right? Let's go ahead and start off by talking about it a little bit, defining a little bit, and understanding what this movement in and of itself is. First of all, you've probably all learned a little bit about the Industrial Revolution, or you have at least heard of it, right? In elementary school, grammar school, and these other areas, I can almost guarantee that you've talked about these little iotas of things about these different ideas. And the ideas, some of y'all have probably heard of one famous invention before called the cotton gin, which you could argue is related to the American Industrial Revolution, but will reinforce the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. But we're not going to be talking about that device. We're talking about the European theater of the Industrial Revolution. So go ahead, put that invention in the back of your head. We'll talk about inventions later on in this flip, possibly. If we get to them, we'll see what happens, right? But what the Industrial Revolution is it is a term coined in the 1830s, right? It's a term coined after the fact, right? After the revolution had already went down and after all this stuff had already happened, people began to say, oh, those last 100 years were pretty much an industrial revolution. Am I right? Now, what it is, though, is it's basically a way to define the burst of major economic inventions and economic expansion that took place mostly in cotton textiles and in iron, right? So the development of iron and then also the development in textiles, which will lead to the creation of factory systems and more intense industrial systems, and then later on we'll have a second industrial revolution, right? That will actually have to do more with smaller interchangeable parts and sophisticated factory machines and things like that. But the thing about it, though, is this does get started off in the 1830s, okay? Now the question is, though, that we always got to start off with is Great Britain, okay? When this all goes down, Great Britain is what the country is basically known as by this point, because by the 1800s they have been referred to as Great Britain due to the union, permanent union between Ireland, Scotland, and also England and Wales. And so this big thing we need to understand is Britain, England, United Kingdom, not yet, but anyway, in general, Manchester. Now, when we're talking about this place, why there? So really, really quickly, let's jump over to my board real quick, and let's talk about that. All right, so now that we're over at my board and stuff like that, so we can talk about why Britain is going to be the home of the Industrial Revolution. As we can see, why Britain? We have several different reasons why Britain is going to be the focal point and the center location of the Industrial Revolution that booms in Europe over that 100-year time span of about 1730 to 1830. Now, the first one to start off with is mostly due to the fact that Britain has a massive amount of colonies, right? So Britain has colonial holdings and colonial expansion in both the Americas, okay, starting in the 1730s. Also going into, as well as areas in Africa and Latin America and other, major resources. And then also by the 1800s when they adopt India into their colonial system as well. Not adopt, take over is more the word that we should be using. Now, the colonies, though, are going to provide a very, very good set of two things for the British. One is going to help them make a lot of money because they can grow raw materials, cottons, and things things like that, different linens and items like that in the colonies, and then ship them back to Europe, all right, back to Great Britain, and then put them in their factories so they can do a double whammy with their money, and then they can sell it back to them, right? So this is going to be a massive reason why Britain is going to be able to kind of be that focal point and that center area of the Industrial Revolution. Another really big reason is because the agricultural revolution, right? The agricultural revolution is going to actually have two reasons why it's going to help Great Britain grow in the Industrial Revolution. As we remember with the agricultural revolution, the big movement that was actually led by the Dutch and by the British in the 1700s, or like early 1700s, and then also the late 1600s, which led to the advent of things like the seed drill, land reclamation in the Netherlands, right? The crop rotation system, and created a system where people didn't need to work as often, like when it came to farming, which actually gave them the ability to work other smaller jobs. So a big thing about it is we've got wages on the rise because of the agricultural revolution. People are now working in the putting out system, the cottage industry, and things like that in their homes within Great Britain. So if they're making money, that means that they can go out and buy certain things, right? And if the Industrial Revolution is now providing cheap textiles, they can go out and use those wages to buy those items, right? Wages get invested, and then, wages are used to buy those textiles. Companies then take that money and reinvest it into their business, growing their business. We got the birth of capitalism right now, all right? So like now, look, all those things that Adam Smith wanted to define, but even early on, he didn't quite know how to define just yet. I'm sorry for all the shaking as well. Now, looking at this as well, though, also the agricultural revolution, since you have a lot of wage earners right now, is going to provide also a very large workforce, right? Due to the fact that you have all these people that are now working in the putting out system, in the cottage industry, that are now not working every single waking moment and minute on a farm. They now can actually be laborers that will go inside of your factories, your areas like that, move into the cities, and actually find work in those different kind of assets and advents and things like that. Another big reason why Britain is going to be the home of the Industrial Revolution is because it's an island, right? Like this is a really, really big one, okay? It's an island. There's nowhere in Great Britain that is more than 50 navigable miles to water, right? Like so you can easily go 50 miles, find ocean, right? That's going to help for them shipping, trading. It's also a big reason why their Navy was so big and stuff like that. And their naval force was also even invented in the first place just to protect all these guys, right? So looking at it as well, the island is going to lead to the construction of canals all over Great Britain, just like it happened as well in the Netherlands, which is going to help for the movement of product very easily throughout the island and throughout Great Britain as well, okay? So another big reason why is because there are huge deposits of two necessary items for the Industrial Revolution. You have very, very large deposits of iron and coal throughout Great Britain, right? All over Great Britain, there are large deposits of iron, coal, and other semi-precious metals like lead and other things like that as well that can be used to create factories, to make pig iron and things like that. There's going to be a lot of Minecraft references in this entire unit, so y'all kind of go ahead and calm down a little bit before you start freaking out about smelting when we start talking about iron and stuff. But the fact that they're also the huge deposits of it, but in Great Britain they're also close to the surface, right? They're close to the surface, they're easily mined out and stuff like that, especially with the advent of new technologies and simple machinery that can actually be used to get down there. We'll talk about a lot of that stuff. We'll talk about horsepower and stuff like that. We'll talk about James Watt, steam engine, and all these other elements that are going to go into that iron and coal production. And last but not least, one of the biggest reasons why Britain is going to be the focal point of the Industrial Revolution has to do with the fact that they have a very sophisticated banking system, right? They have a very, very good banking system that existed throughout Great Britain by this point, and so that's going to provide lines of credit, loans, and other different areas where financially these business owners during the Industrial Revolution can actually make some money and increase their holdings and start some businesses, right? So those 5 reasons are the really, really big reasons why Great Britain is going to be the home of the Industrial Revolution and nowhere else. So let's jump back over to my desk real quick, and we'll keep talking a little bit of stuff about some inventions and things like that. So yeah, exactly. That's why Great Britain is going to be the focal point of the Industrial Revolution starting in the 1730s going all the way up until the 1830s. Now, really, really quickly, there is no dead start-stop time for the Industrial Revolution. It's kind of like the Renaissance. It's a big movement that we actually will talk about some things that happened before the 1730s, that happened after the 1830s and things like that. But just understand that those 5 big reasons are why Britain is going to be the big focal area, okay? Now, another big reason about it, though, is that you are an island. You have these colonies. You have iron and coal. You have the agricultural revolution, and you have a workforce and a making system, these things are also going to drive innovation. A lot of people actually refer to the fact that capitalism and then also advanced economic systems drive innovation, which is not wrong, because the next thing that we're going to talk about is inventions, right? Items that were invented by inventors so that they can make as much money as possible and then increase the efficiency of production, right? Now, really, really quickly, when we talk about these inventions, a lot of you want to scream cotton gin. No. All right, no. Stop it. All right, so no, that is an American invention. We're talking about British inventions, right? British inventions that were used in the putting out system and in the cottage system originally to try and make textiles faster and more efficiently. Now, for those of you who actually have an idea in your mind, how are textiles made, right? Well, first and foremost, another big thing that we could easily add to that list of why Britain over there is there was a heavy amount of sheep being herded in Great Britain, right? Tons and tons of sheep can live in Great Britain as well as in the Highlands of Scotland, so they had ample access to wool. So the textile industry is going to be the main focal area of the Industrial Revolution starting out. So when you're making textiles, though, how do you do this, right? You have two simple things, okay? You have the waft and the weave, right? The waft is actually the threads that go up and down, and then you simply weave threads into that waft, up and down, over and under, like that. You pull it down, and you use what's known as a loom, right? A loom is a large device that you can use to do this. Now, to make the actual threads, though, you have to have a spinning wheel, and you have to have several other things. But the problem is that these early versions of the loom and the spinning wheel and carding and stuff like that in the putting out system was efficient because you could split it over multiple households and stuff like that. And Katie Tuttle's family could be in charge of carding, and then Delilah's family could be in charge of spinning, and then the Pansvecchias could be in charge of looming, and then the merchants would come and pick all the stuff up, and bang, we got ourselves a putting out system. But that was slow. It took a long time, right? It took a long time to make these different items. So these inventors are going to come along that are going to create things and items that are going to make that process speed up. If it speeds up, you make more textiles. You make more textiles, you make more money, right? And that's going to help lead to our Industrial Revolution. Now, this is the very first one, and no, that is not a canoe, Stella. All right, so now look, what that thing is actually known, that's not called the John K. It's actually called the flying shuttle, okay? The flying shuttle, as in flying and then shuttle, okay? Like the shuttle race or a shuttle that you would hop on to get from one place to another, right? The flying shuttle, what it is it's actually a weaving device invented by this guy named John Kay in the 1730s, okay? So what it does is actually very, very interesting. So remember when I said you had to have somebody that took their little hands and they weaved the thread up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, in the putting out system on these large looms and stuff like that, typically what would happen in these homes is a father would actually run the loom itself using the different mechanics to actually push and pull and tighten all the weaves up and stuff like that. But then the children would usually have their hands and stuff like that and slowly working them all the way through. That takes a long time to get all the way over and then clack, clack, and then you got to do it all over again using your bare hands, right? What the flying shuttle did is they actually changed the loom design a little bit to take the wafts and alternatingly split them a little bit to create a small gap of air, right? And a small gap of area. And what happens is the flying shuttle would sit on a small little runner of wood, and the thread would actually come out of this little bobbin right here. And now I can just have this, and I go smack, and I actually just hit it, and it shoots down the line and goes all the way to the other end. And I go clack, clack, and I switch the threads and go whap, and it goes phew, and it just goes the other way very, very quickly and efficiently. I tell you what we'll do is we'll watch a little video on it tomorrow if any of you are actually kind of confused about this. So now what we have, because of the flying shuttle and under John Kay, we can now actually weave much faster. Now if we can weave much faster, that's going to create a higher demand for the thread, right? Because we're now using it way faster than we ever have. So what thing about it is what we're going to now do is go to our spinning wheel. How can we make our spinning wheel more efficient? Well, that's when this man named James Hargreaves comes along in 1765, and he creates a thing known as the spinning jenny, which is actually a spinning wheel that could spin 10 threads at a time. Rather than one person on a spinning wheel just spinning it out, spinning it out, spinning it out, taking their time, sweet old time to make yarn, we now have one person that can get on this actual crank and sit there and crank the thing itself, and that's going to create 10 threads at once, right? And so if you take a bunch of these spinning jennies and you slam them all into a big room together, you have your first factories, right? So what we're going to do, though, is we're going to stop with those two early inventions to make sure that we understand what's going on, understanding the why Britain concept and stuff like that. We'll talk more about these developments a little bit later on, and especially when I see y'all in class tomorrow, okay? So y'all have a great rest of your day. I'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good one.